Well, happy, beautiful, amazing day. Dr. Bob Rakowski here this week with Jennifer Yale, who I am very excited to have a conversation with. You look at her, she's fit, she's healthy, she's beautiful. And guess what? She is a masculinity coach. And you know what? I absolutely know that she is beyond competent at that. I've looked at her stuff, but there's a paradox there. So, Jennifer, if you don't mind, what's your backstory? How did you get here and your interest in masculinity coaching?
Yeah, so I didn't set out to choose, okay, I'm going to teach men how to be masculine. And that's not really what I do per se. So we'll get into that. But my background is, well, my story that is layered with people pleasing and lots of failures, and really a lack of identity in myself. Um, I grew up with great parents, but for some reason I lacked the self-worth and self-value piece, that I should have had, and so I set out on a pattern of very people-pleasing, bad decisions, both professionally and personally, that led me into some pretty unfortunate, situations. Lots of money lost, lots of, abuse, lots of, um, just and this was not like I take full blame in putting myself in these situations, of course, because I that especially when you're in an abusive type of situation, it is a dual toxicity, I think. The people pleaser is toxic for allowing it, and then the person on the other side is, of course, responsible for their issues too. But anyway, I eventually hit a rock bottom. I was in a situation in which my children were watching. I'm a mom of 3. My little boy who has special needs was also, um, getting the brunt of some of this verbal abuse as well, and, um, at some point, I was just like, "Okay, my life has to change drastically right now. My children are watching, they're involved in this. What am I doing with my life?" Like, if you feel like you have good intentions as a people pleaser, but really you don't.
So, just by way of sharing, we all have yin and yang. Assertiveness is generally considered yang. People pleasing, or just being nicer is generally considered yin. We have some of that, but we can get out of balance. We can be too nice, and by the way, we can be too mean. So you maybe erred on the side of being too nice, and my wife might disagree with this, but I tend to do that myself as well. It's one of those boundaries we need to learn. So, ultimately you realize your kids were being affected. So how did you transition? How long did it take? What was the process like for you?
So first of all, I had to leave the relationship that I was in, and since it was a toxic relationship, there were the high highs and the low lows, and it was really hard for me to leave because I was to the point of I think my dignity had been stripped so much that I was dependent on him. So for me to actually leave him was very, very hard. So that was the one first thing I had to do. Um, but I was I guess the point I was in gave me such a sense of urgency because of my children that I was on fire to do better. And so I immediately got a therapist, a good support system being, a couple of friends and my parents, of course. Um, but the driver was really like, I have to change for my children. And then I became closer with God. I started following the word instead of just believing, which is a huge difference, I think, because I've always been a believer in Jesus and God, but like there's there's something that I think that you have to have more depth to follow instead of just believe. So there's really good life changes when you start following because there's something inside of you that just is inherently desiring to follow the right way. And so that was a big piece of it. But therapy, God, coaching, both personal coaching and business coaching, um, and of course, physical act like working out, getting back into workouts every single day. The person I was with, um, would not let me work out because it was a strange thing. It was a strange thing. I had to sneak workouts in.
Well, I think we've got a red flag there. If you're in a relationship with someone where you need to sneak something, okay, we need a little more honesty there on both parts, right? That's quite interesting.
Definitely, but you know how important that is,
I do.
working out every single day, it's so important for you mentally, physically, spiritually, it's just I can't live without it, so getting back into that daily, and then little things that I figured out would change my life, like, I have a system of time management and reflection every day that I cannot live without, and that really, really started changing my life and made it more intentional and purposeful. As I got into my journey of this journey that I was on, I actually found myself, which is one of the things that I was lacking prior. I didn't know who I was, had no identity. I had an identity that formed around whatever business venture I was trying to figure out or whatever person I was with. And so to have my own identity was a huge piece of that. And watching that develop through, God's calling me to different levels of that, and my obedience to Him. So that was really important. And so I eventually started writing little pieces, just little motivational, more like therapeutic pieces for me and put them out on social media. This was before I worked with men or anything like that. And so this was about 6 years ago. And people really enjoyed it. They were inspirational, motivational, very vulnerable too, because I would share what I learned from my own mistakes and, took accountability because I think as a people pleaser, that's also something I lacked because I had this, um, desire to be liked and accepted, and I wouldn't take accountability and ownership for my mistakes because of that, because I was insecure and embarrassed, and so to do that was really important for me too. Um, go ahead.
I'm not sure which influencer to attribute this to. We could probably ask AI, but this one particular person says that authenticity is the top superpower right now. I mean, we got artificial everything. I mean, some people might even think, hey, AI could, in not the too distant future, create this conversation between you and I. But I think what makes you valuable to everybody is your journey and your openness and vulnerability in sharing it. So,
Yes.
so tell me about your first client. How did that happen? And we don't have to give away any confidentiality, but
Yeah.
you started posting things, and where did it go from there?
Yeah, so posting things, and I people eventually told me you should be a coach, and so I originally wanted to coach the type of woman that I used to be, people pleasing, like, but driven, highly functional person. And for whatever reason that didn't work out, so I decided to coach my first male client, and together we changed his entire life, and he is still to this day the most happy he's ever been and the most successful in relationships and his professional life. And so that kind of gave me it was kind of like God's wink to me. This is what you should focus on. So I started really focusing on that. And I think the lack of masculinity that I had in my own life really, I think I could have gone two ways with that, right? Like I could have decided to dislike and hate men, or I could have gone the other way to like really empower them and bring them up to be who they're supposed to be and who they were created to be as men. And so that's what I chose to do. And again, this requires a lot of study. It required a lot of getting deeper into the Bible because biblical masculinity is really the foundation of what I like to focus on, as well as biblical femininity, which goes along with that. Um, I think that's really important too. And so I think my passion for a truly biblical traditional man came from my experience with a lack of that. And then my psychological background as well. And so I just dove in and I intake knowledge constantly. And I just really, really love to help men live as who they were created to be in purpose and in what, and like you said a few minutes ago, what we were all given a very unique story and purpose. And to be able to find that and live that out in discipline and consistency and conviction and like all of these things that you and honor and respect and all of these things that we as people just need to have. I think that's really important. So helping people find that, fix their relationships, stay on track for who they are becoming and who they will be. It's really important.
I want to take a slight detour in the conversation. You came to a fork in the road. You said, I could have been one of those people that, okay, says, I hate men. I want nothing to do with men. I'm angry at men. And let's face it, we men do a lot of stupid stuff where everybody can be angry at us. But the other road is, okay, I can embrace masculinity for its value and maybe help guys that are either not getting there or overexpressing that. But what about there are seeming to be way more women in our society that are taking that other fork saying, I don't like men, I want nothing to do with them. What do you have to say to those women?
Well, okay. It all goes back to creation, I think. Um, we were designed as men and women were designed to be the helpers of men, right? Um, Without the masculine and feminine dynamic or dance, as I like to call it, I don't think that you can have a healthy relationship. I don't think we were also meant to be, um, I don't think women were meant to be independent. It just, it, and I've been through that stage. Like I went through a stage for a period of about 2 to 3 years where I was independent. I decided I didn't need anybody. Eventually, it becomes exhausting because we weren't created to be that. We were created to be feminine individuals that can bloom and relax and be nurturing and gentle and soft. We're supposed to be soft. And so I think there's such a well, not only is there emasculation of men everywhere, especially, women, I think women empowerment is good. But feminism, I think, destroyed families, and it is destroying women too. Feminism, which is meant to empower women, is destroying women. And so I don't think we as a society can survive without good masculine men. And I think when that masculinity is abdicated, which we see from the beginning of time in Genesis, women cause a lot of chaos and society causes a lot of chaos, and it's the absence of that that kind of derails society and families. So it's really important for marriages, for children, for the self to have that masculine influence.
Uh, Commentary. I love strong women, physically strong, mentally strong, emotionally strong, spiritually strong, socially strong, financially strong, impactfully wrong, the 7 strong, the life areas. And we're all designed to be strong, but we're also designed to have the other side, men both. So, you know, some famous influencer again, and I'm stuck for the name, but he said, you can argue with reality, but you'll lose every time. I think, it's pretty indisputable, except maybe among a few people. Reality is there are men, there are women, there are different. Men are physically stronger. I believe women are emotionally stronger.
Yeah.
So how do we blend the two of those and help men to be their best selves?
Well, so and kind of like, well, I think to answer that question broadly, we have to be able to be willing to let go of the control, to want the control of both things. You have to be willing to surrender. Whether you're in a marriage or not, you have to be able to surrender, to God, but also to the things that are holding you back from being your true self. And so to your point at the very beginning about, like, why this works, me as a woman, and I don't teach men how to be men. I rather empower them to operationalize their masculine traits to best fit their personal and professional situations. Like, I do believe in the fact that men do need to be around men in a brotherhood to fully, like, develop into their truly masculine self, but what I do and I think my feminine perspective and my feminine touch does help empower them and make them feel seen and be able to be vulnerable, but also be able to feel accountable enough to make the necessary changes in their relationships and in their careers to elevate their life.
I love the way you said that. Now, we had talked briefly about the challenges that may be universal. Um, Tell me what you're seeing most commonly with the clients that you're coaching.
Yeah, so most commonly, people are coming to me, and these are really successful guys that are coming to me. They're very they on paper, they look like they would have the best life ever, right? But they're widely suffering from, number 1, mediocrity and lack of purpose. They have no direction. They feel like they're missing something. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do with that energy that is just, like, almost stifling them. Um, they're I would say the number 2 thing is they are disconnected in their marriages. Their marriages are these are, like, long marriages, 20, 30 years, some for some of them, and they are suffering. There's no connection, there's no intimacy, and the woman is, in most cases, the leader of the relationship because the man has become passive. That's a huge, huge problem that I see all the time. And then, of course, we have, I think, what a lot of men are struggling with because, men's mental health in general is at the lowest it's been in a long time. I can't say ever because we always have those phrases about society. Oh, it's like the worst it's ever been. No, the world is ending. I don't know if it's the worst it's ever been, but there's a lot of addiction, whether that's validation, porn, alcohol, whatever the case might be, social media. These are big issues right now, especially the validation. I see validation addiction being really prominent with men.
This edition of the Dr. Bob Rakowski podcast is brought to you by bettercoffeeshop.com, the world's cleanest organic coffee, tested for herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, molds, mycotoxins, and metals, and coming up cleanest in every category, bettercoffeeshop.com. So we need purpose in order to thrive in life, and a lot of these gentlemen haven't found it. So what's the pathway to finding purpose?
So what I do to kind of one thing I do with all of my clients at the very first, is kind of like an intake. So we assess every single part of their life. This is relationships, not just their significant relationship, but all of the relationships. This is their professional life, their finances, their physical, their spiritual, mental, emotional legacy, free time. Every single thing is analyzed. And then we kind of create a new, the most realistic but greedy version of all of those things. How could we elevate all of these things? And we talk about and those turn into action steps and goals. And along that process, a lot of the time they find something that they're missing or they forget about something that they might have felt really called to be passionate for. Because passion, we always think about it as something we would love, something we love, but it's really something that you would actually suffer for. And to find that, that's 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 what we're trying to find. And so it's a lot of work, it's a lot of talking, it's a lot of because purpose has to involve being obligated towards something and providing value to something. Like I could say that I'm really passionate about the stock market because I am, but that's not my passion because it doesn't do anything for anybody else, right? You want to be able to provide your the gifts that you were born with, figure out what those are, and be able to use those to help people, to help situations. So figure out what those special gifts are. And a lot of time we kind of figure out that within that process of the vision assessment. I also do the same thing with the masculine traits. And when you talk about traits like responsibility or love or faith or assertiveness or strength, courage. A lot of times when you talk about those things as they relate to your actual life, you think about things that you don't think about, and you realize that you're missing some things. You're missing the mark on some things. So through that process, it usually comes out.
Sounds like a phenomenally thorough inventory. Now, you give them some homework, you give them a checklist, you have them make a list, or do you actually go over it, you know, and develop it together? How does that work? What's the
We
process?
develop it together in most cases. And so I think that's, you know, I do provide the homework first and they take, their notes, but talking about it is going to be the key. Because one thing that I am not afraid to do is ask very vulnerable and scary questions to people and really make them think. And so I think that that part of it is really important.
I would think that would make a great coach because reality is we're not asking ourselves the questions we need to get the answers that we need to, or we'd be where we need to be. So I'm a huge fan of them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have my own coach as well. Like, I think it's really important to have a coach in life for sure.
Maybe even multiples, maybe even every life area.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
a lot of people do.
yeah. Well, Harvey McKay, who is one of the best of all time, he wrote a book at 89 entitled, You Haven't Hit Your Peak Yet. He has a coach in every area of his life, and he's hit the top percentage across the board. So very, very brilliant. Coaching,
Love that.
the
I
right
love that.
coach has infinite value. So intimacy is a huge topic, and you're saying this is something that seems to be a challenge for at least the clients that you're chatting with. So what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so the thing with intimacy is, okay, as women, and this goes along with gender roles, so I am a big believer in the traditional gender roles because, again, that masculine and feminine dynamic. Once you lose that polarity, the attraction goes away for on both sides. If the woman becomes too masculine in certain traits, certain areas, I'm not talking about physically, she's going to become less attractive, and the same thing happens. We as women are attracted to leadership, to direction, that grounding masculine presence, and when that presence becomes passive, we're not going to look up to him in the same manner, and we're not going to be as attracted. We're not gonna want to be as emotionally or physically connected. And so I think the key to relationships, one of the biggest keys is to keep that polarity.
Well, you said there was a flip for a lot of these guys. I want to try to put it in the well, maybe not politically correct term, but the woman becomes the head of the house. That's what I heard you say. So does that happen slowly? What is it? Just does the guy just give up his power? How does that happen?
Yeah, it happens slowly. And the guy does give up his power because there's this thing that I think men think they're being nice when they start to do little things that are passive, like, oh, they stop making the decisions that maybe they should be making, even the simple ones, like, where are we going to go eat? Where are we gonna go on a date? What should we do? What should our daughter do about this? Like, and they leave too much open. We like a decision maker, and the little passive moments slowly create more and more bigger passive moments until the man truly does not care anymore and does not even care about being the leader because it's just easier for the woman to remain in that position. And then there's nothing left. And then they start resenting each other. And then resentment will eventually turn to contempt. And I don't think there's any way you can come back from contempt. And so, um, again, that polarity. So there's a difference between passive is never good. Passive aggressive is never good. Never, never. But there's a difference between nice and kind. Kind, like a nice guy is a people pleaser, a passive guy. A kind guy is a very loving, good man who has boundaries and standards. A man must have boundaries and standards, even with his wife, for the relationship to work.
Well, I'll go not just with man, but women too. We all need boundaries and
Oh,
standards.
yeah.
Raise them, right? The about where the standards should be high.
Yes.
There seems to be a trend, and I don't think I'm overstating. Over the last couple decades, it was almost like the rise of the beta male. They got these. They wouldn't be any of my friends. I'm a bit of an alpha, and I can butt heads with alphas, but my buddies are alphas, and we have a little fight, and we shake hands afterwards, and we go, "Hey, life is good." I don't have any friends that are beta males, not close. So what is that all about? Do you think it was deliberate, and where's it taking society? And what do we do about it?
Well, I think modern culture to begin with has some issues, that is I think that has kind of created the whole beta male thing. Um, Really, I think a beta male is just a nice guy. He's not going to challenge anything. And I think again, like what good is that? I don't know. Um, I think that hold on a second. We'll have to edit this out. I lost my train of thought.
Anything to do with that.
Not to Try not to go into anything too political.
You know what? Don't worry about it. This is a podcast. You know. Yeah, whatever you want.
So I think in general, our culture has been training us to let go of certain standards that we should have within our system. And I don't want to be political in any way. I'm not saying this to be political, but I think there are certain parties who have trained us to think certain ways and to go on feelings instead of standards and morals. And I think the absence of God in culture in general right now has deleted standards, aiming high for things, meritocracy, all of these things that we should as people be striving for, but instead we get to use our feelings to determine what is the truth instead of God. And I think that has created a weak population, including the beta males.
Religion has been on the decline.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'd like to think that people are realizing there's a void there. We need some level of spirituality. So how do we, with religion on the decline and listen, I've seen so many things within organized religion that I go, they must be trying to take them down from within by putting bad actors in. But with religion on the decline, how do we find spirituality? How do we find the right church? Do we need the right church? What do we do?
I think we do need the right church because it's in the word that we are supposed to worship in community. Is it required to have a relationship with God? Of course not. But I think we do. And I think, if you look to see what's happening in at least the United States right now, I think God is coming back. I'd like to say that he is coming back. I see him more often now than I have, in the past, many, many years. And I think that's exciting. I think people have called it like a revival of Christianity. I believe in that. Do I think it's going to, obviously, if you believe in the book of Revelation, things are going to come crashing down at some point, but ultimately God wins. But I think it's just kind of like an ebb and flow, and whoever's in the current administration kind of determines that. But I think it would be really wonderful as a whole, no matter what anybody's political party is, that we can realize that kindness and respect and God's character, Jesus's character, like if we just like embody those things, it doesn't matter what you believe in, things would be much better off. Um,
I thought of
Go
so many different things to say as you said that, and one, we look at Abe Lincoln, who I think, if he wasn't the greatest president, how he's not far down the list. Half the country didn't like him. Half the country literally took up arms against his ideals to create free people. But someone asked Abe Lincoln, and this, what you said made me think of it so clearly. They said, "Abe, do you think God's on your side?" And Abe said, "That's none of my concern. I just want to be on God's side."
Ew,
And
sad.
there
I don't
is,
know that quote.
yeah, well, you do now. There's no way that God loses. There's no way that God loses. So why not be on God's side?
Yeah, I mean, that's powerful. I love that quote. It kind of reminds me of what I heard Jordan Peterson, he's one of my favorite people, and he used to not believe in God. He does believe in God now. I don't know whether he believes in Jesus or not, but I heard him get asked the question, well, do you believe in God? And, he's like a very intellectual, philosophical guy, and he's going to have a very deep answer, but he said something to the effect of, well, why would I not? Why would I not believe in God? Because if God is real, wouldn't you want to be on his side? He said that in much more intellectual terms, but it was, I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? And even if you take that out of the equation, the biblical principles that we are supposed to live by, I don't care if you believe in God, but even if you just lived your life by those principles, your world would be awesome.
I'm going to encourage people to investigate that. I really enjoyed Jordan's book, We Who Wrestle with God. And someone asked him if he's a Christian, and he said, I don't know how to answer that. Have I taken up my cross? Have I lived that example? Am I Christ-like? He says, no way, none of us are. That's the most extreme example you could ever be. But what you're saying is there's the ideal. why not reach for it?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It takes some commitment, and it's harder to live like that for sure.
It absolutely is. So, the magic window for this podcast tends to be about 30 minutes, and we're coming up on that right now. So I'm going to give you the final moments to share whatever message you want to empower men, women, all of us as we wrap this up.
Let's see, if I could narrow it down into a couple of things, I would say first and foremost, try your hardest to believe in something higher than yourself. For me, that's God. For you, it might be something else, because that belief will propel you forward, and it will help you come into your calling, who you were designed to be. Number two, remember that we are men and women, and we're supposed to have that polarity. And so, if you want a really healthy relationship, try to embody those traits of your femininity or your masculinity. Um, Let go and surrender a little bit, and be disciplined. I think discipline and consistency will get you very, very far.
I think that's a great wrap up. We men, we want to honor our masculinity, but no, we also have some femininity. Ladies, honor your masculinity. Your rough road was your path to finding it. And as you're saying, enjoy that femininity because it makes the entire world better.
Yeah, yeah. I love it.
And as always, I'm Dr. Bob Rakowski, absolutely knowing that we can all be happy, healthy, and successful. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me.